Greetings and salutations. This video is for Laurent. This is a little video about how the DBX 266XL compressor gate works. He said he wanted me to do a video about it, so therefore I am. I have had to get really creative about lighting the scene so that you could see anything at all, because this is all dark colored equipment in the darkest corner of the room. So I have my camp lantern sitting there shining on this thing so that you can see what's going on. Okay, the compressor limiter audio processor here works like this. Audio is fed into the input, and that audio goes into a voltage controlled amplifier. But before it gets there, it is split off into a control circuit. And the control circuit is actually two different circuits. The first one is an RMS level detector, sort of like what a meter does. Okay, it just generates a voltage that tells the rest of the system how loud something is. And then that signal then goes into the control circuitry, and you can change parameters on that signal, and then it is fed back into the VCA. The audio going into the VCA is then amplified or attenuated depending on what that control circuit tells it to do. And then the output is fed to the outputs of the compressor. A voltage controlled amplifier is an amplifier that has a very wide dynamic range. They run in Class A mode, and the simplest VCA is the kind that you would find in a television set, where by remote control you can control the volume. There isn't actually a potentiometer in there that's being turned. There is a VCA chip that controls the volume. Of course, the ones in TV sets are nowhere near as high quality as what you would find in an audio processor like this. The inputs on this are balanced or unbalanced depending on how you wire it up. It's XLR inputs or 1/4 inch phone jack, and the system can be operated at 2 levels plus 4 dBm for recording studios, radio stations, professional equipment. And then this particular model also has a switch on it where you can switch it to -10, which makes it be able to work with semi-pro equipment, and you can hook it into your stereo. So that is how this is set up. It is, of course, being run unbalanced because I'm feeding it with unbalanced audio. The specifications on this particular box are pretty astounding. The noise floor is like -93. That's the signal-to-noise ratio at unity gain, and I'll describe what unity gain is here shortly. And then the total dynamic range of the unit is about 114 dB from the lowest to the highest, and channel separation is over 100 dB because it's actually 2 separate channels in this box. So they do share a power supply, but the channel 1 and channel 2 are discrete. So you can have this box be there and have it be doing completely separate things. And the idea here is that this controls dynamics of whatever audio you feed into it. So you would take the output of a mixing console, let's say, and then you would feed it to this box, and it would process it, and then it would control the dynamics. This is not a brick wall limiter. It is not the kind of thing that killed the sound of CD audio. This simply just controls the dynamics. It doesn't try and crush them. So what I'm going to do is I'll take you through the controls and the sections on the front of the unit, and then we'll play around with the audio and I'll show you what it does here. Okay, so there is no power switch because this is designed to be in a rack and it's supposed to run all the time. And as a matter of fact, if it's been off for a while, you have to kind of let it cook for 10 minutes before it works the way it's supposed to, because everything has to come up to temperature and stabilize. I've noticed that about it. And so the first control here we have is the threshold for this section. This section on this channel is the gate expander. And what that does is it does the opposite of compression. It will actually increase dynamic range, so as the input level goes up, this will actually amplify it. And this works at the very low end of the scale there between the quietest sound and the loudest sound that you're going to send into the unit. So below a certain threshold, this thing starts expanding, and this does a couple of things. First of all, it tends to reduce noise because when there's no audio sent to it at all, you see that the voltage-controlled amplifier is registering about 6 dB of gain reduction, which means it's actually turning things down to about 6 dB. I have set that to where that comes to unity gain. What unity gain is that input equals output. And with a VCA, they usually sound better when they're run toward the middle of the range. You don't want a VCA to be sitting there with absolutely no gain reduction, because what it's going to do is it's going to pull up a bunch of noise. It's actually going to be amplifying the input signal. And so if there's any noise in that signal, you're going to hear it. So I'm using the expander and the gate here, so when nothing is being sent into the system, that it actually kicks that VCA in and puts some gain reduction on it. So that's what these first two controls do. This sets the threshold for that, and this control sets the ratio at which it will expand. It is set very low right now. It's like 1.3 to 1. If I would turn that control up, what would happen is that when the audio level dropped below that threshold, at a certain point it would simply cut off, and that would make that a noise gate. It would just absolutely just cut the signal off completely. And in other words, what it would do is it would overbias the VCA and it would send it into cutoff. That's exactly what it would be doing. So you would see full gain reduction on the meter, and it would actually go past the point where it will pass any audio at all. But you don't have to run it that way. Now, in broadcast stuff that has gates in it, it's a different kind of gate. It's called a freeze gate. In other words, what it does is that when the input signal drops below a certain threshold, it freezes the VCA wherever it is at that moment. And some processors actually have it set that if that audio gain doesn't come back up, it will later on drift the audio to unity gain. It will drift the VCA to unity gain, so that's where the VCA will be. This is not sophisticated like that. It just has a gate and an expander, and essentially I'm using it to do the same thing, because when everything goes to idle gain, it puts it at right around -6 or a dB of gain reduction there. So I hope that makes sense. All right, now into the compressor itself. We set a threshold at which compression will kick in with this control, and then the next thing is the ratio at which the compressor is actually going to be compressing the input. So if the ratio is set to 4 to 1, what that means is that you will need to increase the input by 4 dB in order to get a 1 dB increase in output. Now, this particular box has a lot of circuits in it that interpret the input, and it will try and select a ratio, and it will vary other control factors here we're talking about in order to achieve an output that doesn't sound like it's been compressed. So the next thing that you see here is the attack time and the release time. And essentially what these controls do is they control how quickly the control circuitry will jump to attention when the audio gain jumps up. So the attack time controls that, and then the release time controls how long it's going to hang on to that particular level before it starts releasing gain reduction and actually turning the audio up again. Now, some compressors, they actually have numbers on them that are meaningful. So it would be like you could set the attack time to something like 0.5 milliseconds and the release time to 350 milliseconds or something like that. They generally sound like shit, and they're only useful for effects. So they're only really useful for, like, processing a guitar in a recording studio or something like that. Well, this box is designed to process mixed audio. So, like the input from something like a mixing board or something like that. So you have these little black box controllers in here that actually vary this in such a way that it listens to the content of the program audio, and it analyzes the density of the signal there, RMS compared to peak, and then it tries to decide on an attack and a release time that will sound the best. And then finally, the last control here is the output gain. And if you have your threshold on input set to where it is claiming 10 dB of gain reduction from the system, then in order to achieve input versus output gain when the system is actually working, you will have to bring that up a little bit. And so that's what that does. So when you're aligning one of these things, you set your gain reduction, send a tone through it, and then you set your input versus output. Then we have two controls here. This one is bypass. When this is pressed, it bypasses the system and it no longer is controlling the audio. It just goes straight through. And this one will tie these two channels together. It puts it in slave mode. So what you have is that the controls on this channel will control the second channel over here. So if you're driving stereo into this right and left, that means that the channels will track each other. So if one channel gets a little louder than the other, this channel will track that so that your stereo image doesn't move around. Because what can happen is on like really wide stereo image, like Beatles stuff, is somebody will start to sing and it's loud in the left channel and the whole stereo image appears to move over because you have more gain reduction here than you have in this channel. Now, I actually kind of like that sound a little bit, so a lot of the times I run it completely uncoupled. And these two amplifiers are so well matched that as long as you have these controls matched in the front, they act on the right and left channel in exactly the same way with the same time constants and all that happy crap. So that's essentially what it does. And then, like I said, you can tie it together. We can bypass, and if the system is coupled, the controls over here also control channel 2. And so therefore the audio is treated equally in the right or channel 1 and channel 2, or left and right, however you have this thing set up. And that makes sure that your stereo image tracks. So if you listen to Helter Skelter by the Beatles with a pair of headphones on, you will hear that they used compressors on that, and they did not couple them. So the stereo image, it seems to bounce back and forth from left to right a little bit, and that's just because they used two separate compressors, one for each channel, and they were not coupled. So that's what that effect sounds like. Now, with a compressor like this, the effect of this is actually so subtle that it's not really super apparent when that happens. And so, but you do get this really groovy stereo effect. We did this in radio a lot of the times. We would take certain audio processors and wire two of them up, and two monos, one for each channel, and then the resulting stereo output was really just wow. It was amazing. And as long as you don't have those compressors working very hard, or those processors, you're not going to hear the channels bounce around and that sort of thing. But you do get this really wide stereo effect. So that's one of the reasons I like to run it that way, because you get this really cool effect. And also, if you have a channel that is a little louder than the other, in other words, it's imbalanced, if you run two compressors on it, that will balance the channel. So what comes out will be, what it's supposed to be. Or, some theoretical balance that you set. So that's essentially what that does. Now, to line this up, of course, you can do it by ear, but I like to do it with a tone. So I have this little CD that I made a long time ago. I don't know how well you can see that. Probably pretty out of focus. But what this is, this is a poor man's signal generator right here. So I have a bunch of tones at different levels on here. And instead of having to have a signal generator hooked up, then I can use a CD player as a signal generator. Now, the output of a CD player is pretty predictable, because if the digital audio is at 100%. In other words, you send a sine wave to it, and then at the peak of the sine wave, you're essentially out of numbers. Then that sets the absolute maximum output of the CD player, and then you can reference to that. So if you know what that is, then you can have things set at like, -6 RMS, -20 RMS, that sort of thing. So what I'm going to do is very quickly here, I'm going to play a tone through here, and I'm going to let you see the gain reduction. Now what this particular set of tones is, for the first couple of seconds it's at -20. For the next couple of seconds it will be at -6, which is about the average level of a CD that's not compressed all to hell. That's kind of the target level before they started running all that brick wall limiting. So any CD made before like 1995 or CDs with dynamics, that's what they will be. And then so we go from -20 to -6 to 100%, which would be just full tilt boogie 0 dB on the scale there, or reference to the digital 100% mark for modulation. So then you can see what the gain reduction does here, and you're going to be able to, and then I'll play it again, and you'll see what the output actually looks like on the meter for the cassette deck here. Okay, so let's go ahead and hit it. Now let's watch that gain reduction. This is in mono, so it will be the same for each channel. So here we go. Play, please. I think I hit the stop button. -20. -6. We have 6 dB of gain reduction. 100% goes to 15. Actually, it's about, that would be about 16. So that reflects the range there. And so you saw what that did. Now I'm going to go back and we're going to look at the output on the meter down here so you can see what this thing is actually doing. So now we're looking at the meter on the tape deck. So as you can see, it doesn't change much. Now, that's not at full scale. It's set just below 0 for a reason. And that is because actual music going through this thing will have a little higher peak value. So what you're listening to is mono pink noise, which represents audio in nature. And as you can see, now it's jumping up to 0 because you have to take that back down about 3 dB when you're going from pink noise, or rather a tone to pink noise, because a tone, of course, is not natural. So that gives you some idea of what it does on the output there. Now, this particular compressor has some pretty interesting features in it in the control circuitry. It has a control circuit that you can either switch in or switch out that's called over easy, and that's very famous from DBX. And what over easy does is it tries to look at the input level versus the output level, and it adjusts the threshold of compression to come up with what they call a soft knee. In other words, it's not, oh, you've crossed the threshold, now you're in full compression. So it can actually vary that a little bit. So when actual audio plays through this thing, you will see here that there is a meter, or rather just a set of lights up here that tells you what it's doing. So let's talk about the indicator lights here other than the gain reduction meter. This set of lights right here will tell you whether the expander gate is in control of the system. So if it's red, that means the gate is on, and if it's green, that means the gate is off and the audio is above threshold. This tells you what the compressor itself is actually doing, and so if the light is that on the minus there, that means that the audio is not being compressed. It is below the threshold of compression. If it's in the middle and the over easy circuit is switched on, then what that means is that it is in the over easy range and the system is monitoring the input and it will only kick the compressor in high gear if it actually has to, like, reduce the gain of a peak or something like that. But other than that, it pretty much leaves it alone. And then this light indicates that it's in full compression, which means that it's just the system is having to really work on the audio to keep the gain down so you don't go over your preset output. And that works in conjunction with the ratio control, and that also works with the attack and release. So as you slam more compression into it, basically it kicks all this stuff in to get control of the audio so it doesn't overdrive whatever equipment the compressor is hooked to. So this is what it looks like when it's doing actual audio. I'm not going to play music because, I get busted for music. So here we go.
Radio at 75 from Distant Midnight Voice.
Lipton Tea and Lipton Soup present Inner Sanctum Mystery.
To personalized electronic companion.
While they're talking, we're rocking.
We play your songs, give your ideas a voice, accompany your life. We're radio in 1995. 75 years young and growing younger every day. Hi, this is Casey Kasem. Welcome to Radio at 75, a special CD program commemorating the 75th anniversary of radio broadcasting, produced by Radio Inc., radio's premier management and marketing magazine, official headquarters of Radio 75th, and broadcast programming, local radio's expert music programming resource. In a moment, the exciting new Radio 75th on-air spots produced by Dick Orkin. But first, here's an introductory word from B. Eric Rhodes, chairman of Streamline Publishing and publisher of Radio Inc.
Thanks, Casey. Radio's 75th anniversary is a tremendous opportunity to create
All right, that's enough.
advertiser awareness.
That's enough. That's a cool CD that I got a long time ago when I was still working in radio. That's kind of a rarity. And I was looking for something that would show off the way this thing works without getting me busted for copyright. So anyway, that's it. That's how it works. I've already rambled on for about 20 minutes on this. You guys who are looking for Linux videos, I'll have some more of those coming up. Because I'm going to end up having to put this on YouTube. There's no way that I can post it directly to Facebook because it's over 20 minutes. So you Linux dudes are going to get a little treat here. We've got an audio about video. So anyway, I love these things, these compressors, because, this was my first love, was engineering and audio engineering. And what these things do is it's like a fluid math problem. It's like an equation that's constantly adjusting itself. And so you play with them, you watch them, you tweak a knob and it makes a different sound and it does something different. They're kind of musical instruments all on their own, and that's why I bought it, was just to play with it. And also, I do have a mixing board that I'm going to hook up, and I'm going to plan on buying a couple of DJ CD players so I can do some live mixing, man. I miss doing that, just putting songs together and making noise. So at some point, I'm going to go to phase 2 of this project, and that's what I'm going to do. So anyway, thanks for watching.